Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to DEGREELESSNESS, the Shanghai Pete broadcast, and I'd like to start today off with an apology. I know I swore never to leave you this long again, but this time it was truly out of my hands. That being said, I've got to come clean about something. I haven't been doing too well this year. Not in terms of the actual content we released here on the channel, that's been fire. I mean in terms of consistency. It's been kind of shit, to be honest. Between the first couple weeks of the year, my stupid day job in IT, and now this flu that I've been dealing with for like almost a month at this point, we kind of been all over the place with our uploads. So before we go any further tonight, I do want to apologize for our upload schedule just being so completely haphazard and unpredictable. I don't know what's been up with flu season this year, but it got right the fuck on top of me this year, and it usually doesn't. I'm talking like, geez, I was in like cold sweats. I couldn't even stand up. I was like paralyzed in bed for like a week. It was awful. And then when I finally started getting a little better, I got slapped with a sore throat and a cold or sinus infection, something. It's been rough. Not to belabor the point because I doubt any of you care that much, but goddamn, my immune system has had its ass kicked all up and down the west side of LA over the past month or so, and it has sucked balls. I hope all of you guys out there are feeling okay. Hopefully you either got flu shots or whatever the hell it is, or managed to avoid getting the flu or getting sick this year, because Jesus Christ, I'd almost forgotten how much it sucked to be that sick. It's been years since I got put down like that. Yikes. Anyway, quick shout out to community member Daily Corvid, who hit me up on Patreon recently and provided many of his family's home remedy options, which I dearly appreciate. Thank you, G. That was awesome of you. But now, deep inside, and on with the show. Don't worry, there will be timestamps in the comments down below if you, like I'm sure many people, want to avoid listening to the About Me section at the beginning of the video. So, oh boy, we certainly have missed quite a few things over the past month, so let's get on with the recapping. And we gotta start with Expedition 33. Holy mother of God, does that son of a bitch slap. I know many of you, myself included, were looking forward to it, and goddamn, we were not disappointed. Or at least I was not disappointed. I hope you weren't either. This motherfucker is an all-timer, holy hell. Between that, the Oblivion remaster, and then having a fever of 103 for most of last month, I haven't had sufficient time to really get deep inside of it, with only maybe I have like 8 hours, 9 perhaps, but I love what I played so far. The art style, the music, storytelling, writing, battle system, it all rules.
It all rules, all that shit rules.
I've heard some people talking about the parrying and dodging mechanic and how it's too unforgiving and the battle system is maybe a little too reliant on it, and honestly, yeah, that might be the case a little bit. But fortunately for me, I am far too old to play games that are not FPSs on anything but easy. So I set that bitch to easy right away and have just been enjoying the gameplay and story, and it's been fine. Realize this isn't exactly a good solution for most people, but it's what I recommend if you want maximum enjoyment. And when it comes to how I spend my free time, personally, I always want maximum enjoyment and minimum stress and minimum frustration. If it's not an FPS, the moment I feel even the slightest bit of frustration, I'm cranking that hoe down to easy. Nobody got time for that, or at least I don't. I'm old as fuck. I get enough frustration and stress at my day job and from day-to-day life when I'm not trying to relax as it is, so I do not need any of that shit during my free time. Moving on, I was going to do an update segment on the Switch 2 shenanigans, but then I took a look through all the recent news. Mario Kart still $80, scalpers are rampant, Prime 4 still has no release date, and there has still been no mention of the next mainline 3D Mario title. In other words, I ain't really got anything else to say about the Switch 2 right now. Yes, I know there's a bunch of pearl clutching in the media right now over changes to their EULA or whatever that says they can brick your console if you're modding it or whatever, and yes, obviously, that's fucking garbage, but as someone who has had a modded Switch for over 5 years and seen people have their modded Switches blacklisted or bricked from trying to go online or connect to the Nintendo network, yeah, they've been doing that shit. So I don't really understand where the sudden outrage is coming from. I mean, the outrage in general is understandable, but the sudden outrage is kind of weird to me. I don't know. When I can stroll into the Target down the street and just grab Mario Kart, the new 3D Mario, and Prime 4 without having to think about it, that is when I will have more stuff to say about the Switch 2. Until then, as always, it's kind of like, fuck you, Nintendo. All right, is there anything else? Let's see. Marathon sucks. They got popped for using plagiarized art. Surprise, surprise. Hey, Bungie, here's a crazy idea, all right? Ready? How about you make a game that's similar to all the games that you made previously that caused you to become insanely popular in the first place? How about that? It's crazy, I know, but I suspect it just might work. Moving on, as we know, Xbox is continued to be cooked, so no shock there. GTA 6 is delayed. Yeah, let's file that under the no shit column. It's got a new trailer. The graphics are good. People are gonna fly into a murderous frenzy trying to get their hands on this game when it comes out, even if it's $500. Great. I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to fuck up the vibes or anything, but nothing about GTA 6 or really the entire GTA series interests me. I like my escapist entertainment to not so closely resemble real life. That's just my preference, so it's just never been my thing. And I don't really have anything else to say about it. I hope everybody that is excited about it, I hope y'all love it when it comes out and you can get your hands on it and it's super fun for everybody. I just don't care. Anyways, I think that's about it. So on to tonight's main story. And that's right, at long last, it's Doom time, baby. We appreciate you taking a brief break from playing Expedition 33 to watch our review. Oh yes, boys and girls, Doom is back, and not a moment too soon either. I needed something like this deep in my soul. That's just pure stupid fun right now. I needed it very badly. I feel like many of you may have as well. Maybe you're getting that from Expedition 33 already, maybe you needed more. The good news is that Doom is more, a lot more. Unfortunately, it looks like it's doing predictably well. Reviews have started to come out. I'm seeing pretty much straight 8s, 9s, and 10s. That's excellent for us Doom fans, and it is excellent for id Software, since as we know, as long as something keeps making money, we can expect more of it. And if there is one thing I always want more of, it's Doom. I was honestly maybe a little worried that after all the post-Eternal whining that they would respond by nerfing it too hard or doing some deranged self-sabotage Nintendo type shit. But fortunately, that does not seem to be the case, at least in my opinion. Looks like it has responded with their typical finesse and creativity. Thank God. Much less fortunately, however, Bethesda, once again back to their typical Bethesdaing, has decided to include de novo once again, which aside from causing many issues, which we're all no doubt familiar with, it has also caused me to spend my actual money on this in order to play it soon enough to sate not only my ravenous Doom appetite, but also, soon enough to review it. I suppose I shouldn't be that surprised. Eternal had de novo, it is Bethesda, but I can still be, well, perhaps not disgruntled, but definitely annoyed. I'm just a regular dude with bills to pay, and I didn't necessarily have 70 spare dollars to spend not on rent or food, but, here we are. Anyway, with that preamble out of the way, let's get deep inside Doom, the Dark Ages. First of all, let's start here. As you guys know, I do try to not bury the lead whenever possible, so I won't waste any further time before telling you that, yes, this game is awesome. Doom fans, you can relax, it is another banger. That being said, it's not completely smooth sailing here. If you're an Eternal hyper fan, something like that, and wanted nothing but Eternal 2.0 turned up to 11, you won't exactly find that here. I would argue that the combat loop, while different, does remain at about the same level of intensity as Eternal, especially if you're playing on Nightmare or harder, but we can talk about that later. Let's talk about performance first, get that out of the way. I did my playthrough on PC on Nightmare difficulty level with all the sliders at their default positions. My PC rig is running an RTX 3070 FTW3 Ultra card, 8GB of VRAM on a Gigabyte Aorus Z690 Ultra board with a 13th gen i5 13600KF overclocked to about 5 GHz and 32 gigs of RAM. In 2K on that rig with DLSS or FSR set to performance and graphics using the Nightmare preset, I got pretty consistent 60 frames per second, and my overall experience was that the game ran perfectly fine and had incredibly deep engine customization options. Really super awesome. Typically, I am not an HDR or ray tracing guy. Most times when I turn HDR on, it just makes everything look washed out. Although, I think Resident Evil Village had good HDR, but that's the only other game I can think of where it was actually, kind of decent. And when I turn on ray tracing, the only thing that I notice is that my FPS are cut in half. Thanks to what I'm guessing is largely id wizardry, that is not the case in Dark Ages. HDR looks fantastic, adds a great mood and cinematic feel, which pairs brilliantly with the surprisingly stunning result of global ray tracing. And actually took me a little while to put my finger on what the overall effect of the ray tracing implementation here was. Like, I could feel it right away, and of course it's easy to spot when you point the camera at a puddle and toggle it on and off as you look at the reflections, but what I don't see mentioned is the kind of profound impression of realism that it adds to the game's entire presentation. I read a quote from John Carmack way back in the day when he was discussing the importance of lighting effects in the Doom 3 engine, and he said, if you put fake lighting on a realistic object, suddenly it looks fake. But if you put realistic lighting on a fake object, it looks real. And I think that's a large part of the reason why not only is ray tracing implemented here, but you can't turn it off. May not be super noticeable like moment to moment, but the cumulative effect on the game's entire presentation writ large is surprisingly severe and makes the world and locations feel realistic in a way that few games, even those with technically superior graphics, do not. I often found myself just pausing and gawking at how gorgeous some of the environments looked, especially in the forest levels. Jesus. They had a very living, painting, almost Diablo 4 kind of vibe at times. So, I guess, congratulations, ray tracing. You finally managed to impress me after, I don't know how many years. Alright, next up, we've got to get into the combat and gameplay since that's what any Doom game is ultimately going to be about. Now, I have absolutely no idea how they did it, but with Dark Ages, it somehow managed to create a combat loop that's at once familiar, comfy, and extremely satisfying, while still feeling like a progression of the overall Doom formula that succeeds in carving out its own identity from not just Eternal but also 2016 as well. As you might imagine from a game where the combat design is so heavily reliant on blocking and parrying, Dark Ages requires you to fully understand each of your tools and precisely what they do and to whom in order to win. You can go from getting utterly curb stomped in an encounter 1 second to breezing through it the next without getting touched by simply managing the mechanics better. Not by improving your reflexes necessarily, just improving your knowledge of the mechanics. And I think that's awesome. I love that. It's that kind of real, actual difficulty tuning that makes the game stand out, and it has that mastered here in a way that has only previously really been seen by the likes of From Software. And so far, the difficulty tuning, at least on Nightmare, feels about right. Feels kind of perfect. I died a few times on the first level while still getting the hang of the controls, and of course then many times in subsequent levels. Enough to ensure that I didn't just breeze through the whole game in one evening, but not so much that I ever really rage quit or considered giving up. That brief glazing I'm giving it aside, the checkpoint system can still suck a dick. I don't know why this has become so popular, especially in FPSs, but I hate it. Please give us back a regular save system. I need to save scum. I have seen some reviewers saying that they think with the new parry formula in Dark Ages, it's playing it too safe and it doesn't do enough to push Doom further. I have an accusation to make. I think those guys were playing on too low difficulty. It is very easy. I mean, to its credit and the designer's credit, it is very easy to just put down the difficulty level and slide a couple of those sliders back to a point where you will have more than enough leeway to just ignore the mechanics. And if you're ignoring the mechanics completely, well, yeah, it probably will feel too safe and like it doesn't go far enough. Don't be a pussy, guys. Come on, game journos. Playing on Nightmare, this shit is every bit as fast, manic, and frenzied as Eternal was, just more in a horizontal way that's not almost completely reliant on movement along a Z-axis and weapon swapping. Indeed, a large portion of the combat loop is about using correct positioning. I've died to some rando idiot many times just because they happen to be behind me or out of view, and as a result, their one baseline attack hit me for like half my health. On Nightmare and higher, even an imp can literally two-shot you from max health. In fact, you are so vulnerable from any direction other than head-on that I'd often just drop dead without any idea of what killed me, which, in fairness, will make you feel kind of insane, but there is an easy fix. Just turn on the threat indicators. For some reason, the game defaults to the threat indicators disabled. Turning them on helped a huge amount, and it's also the default setting for 2016 Doom and Eternal. Why they default to off here, I don't know. It's a weird choice, and it'll likely get a lot of people killed before they figure out that they could just turn them back on. So, positioning is huge, but mastery of the mechanics even more important. This is not a game that you can button mash through at all, at least on the harder difficulties. For example, if you're using the wrong weapon, you are going to die. You see a plasma shield guy coming, you swap to a plasma gun. See a metal shield dude, you bust out that shot of you're kind of effed. A lot of this is gonna, one, be dependent on what difficulty you're playing on, but also not even necessarily the cause of the specific enemy you're facing at the time, but simply because of the sheer amount of enemies surrounding you and the amount of damage that you take from behind in all directions, really, when your shield isn't up. The margin for error here is practically non-existent. You just don't have the time to waste using the wrong gun. Even a shot or two from a plasma gun at a metal shield guy or a slightly mistimed melee strike, more than long enough to leave you vulnerable to the tons of other enemies and incoming projectiles that might not be right in your reticle. Even one hit will often drop you straight to 5 health. Some people, or many people really, are probably going to be a little upset about the lack of a direct focus on weapon swapping like Eternal, but I don't know, I personally kind of found that to be a little gimmicky and annoying, especially when trying to do Ultra Nightmare runs. But in Dark Ages, having the right weapon up at the right time I felt was crucial enough to bind specific keys to specific weapons relatively early on. Finally, before we close out this section, just a little bit on the glory kills system, or maybe lack thereof depending on your perspective. When it comes to glory kills and the glory kills system, I've seen a lot of confusing discussion. Many people seem to think it's gone in Dark Ages. To be clear, as an artistic system where you get to see a whole bunch of cool animations where you kill guys under certain conditions, yeah, there's not a lot of that here. But as a gameplay system where you perform finishers or certain other moves when an enemy reaches a certain health threshold, that's completely intact in Dark Ages. Personally, just as a matter of preference, I like the shield and parry synergy of this combat design over Eternal. I love the verticality of the latter, don't get it twisted, but the myopic focus on the weapon quick swapping mechanic, practically to the exclusion of all else, I found it to be kind of one note and a little boring, and the reliance on it, especially in harder difficulties, got old super fast. The new system in Dark Ages is far more versatile and modular and provides the player with what I feel amounts to a lot more routes and creative options for survival and demon slaying than the old Eternal system did. Now, ultimately, since I think the combat formula in all 3 modern Doom games are just about as mechanically perfect as you can get, which you like more is gonna boil down to your personal preference probably above all else. And not only do I think that's fine, I think it's probably ideal. While it's impossible to please everyone's individual taste, as it proves, it is possible to make your game mechanics so solid that everybody ends up with a favorite to choose from. Moving on, let's talk a bit about the design and world building. And I'm gonna lay this out right away. This game is extremely 40k coded, like to an intense degree. You got chain weapons, candle-filled shrines, titans, drop pods, space marine analogs, and more importantly, the movement and weight of the Doomslayer, as you not so much move around maps and environments as you plow through them, feels like it was practically lifted directly from Space Marine 2. Now, far from a criticism, I think this was a brilliant move. Not only does it feel great, but it also goes a long way to conveying just what an unstoppable juggernaut the Slayer is, as well as making the environments and world feel tactile in a way that's fun and incredibly immersive. The levels themselves are a joy to explore and work your way through, and the open-ended objectives that fill them often give you real choice in how and what order you tackle them, or if you tackle them at all, which ensures that they don't get tedious or predictable. The arena battles from Eternal are still here, kinda, but they're less frequent and formulaic. Personally, I think they need to either get rid of them entirely or implement an actual save system. The amount of progress you lose upon death sometimes, largely due to the non-linear structure of many levels, is oftentimes a little too frustrating to bear. The world building here is absolutely phenomenal as well. It's fun, unique, and surprisingly not unnecessary feeling at all. It does a great job at conveying that these are all actual places filled with an actual society and real people, albeit rather alien from an Earth perspective. It's weird if you think about it how I find the locations in the most recent Doom game to be more believable as actual places than I felt the locations were in Final Fantasy 16. So, that just goes to show you, Square Enix, you got some work to do. They even managed to put a story in here beyond just the codex entries like from the previous games. And maybe even more shockingly, it's kind of cool. It's pretty decent, and I did not find myself resenting it. I did, however, find myself wishing it made just a little bit more sense and was a bit better told, but given that that's not exactly its forte, and plus the fact that even without any cutscenes, the game would still be fantastic, I don't really count this as a big deal at all. If they had really nailed the storytelling aspect of it too, I probably would have just thought of that as a bonus. Lastly, to briefly address the dragon and the titan parts, because I know people have kind of seen them as relatively divisive. What you've heard is largely true. They are kind of pointless and seem sort of obviously just there for rule of cool purposes, but you know what? In a game like Doom, that is completely fine with me. Games like Space Marine and Doom are what the rule of cool was invented for. Besides, while not appearing necessary per se, the dragon and mech piloting sequences were super fun. They did seem a bit on the easy side though, especially compared to the rest of the gameplay, but in fairness, that may just simply be because of all the time I've logged playing a Zealot in Darktide, which at this point is probably like over 800 hours, if you were wondering. Lastly, a quick note on the music here. In case you were wondering if Mick Gordon is still the GOAT, I tell you now that he is. Finishing move, they did a fine job here, absolutely fine, and their score fits the mood and tone of the game wonderfully. But that said, at the end of the day, like, all the tracks kind of blend together into one sort of samey blast beat, palm muted metal track. Like, it sounds great moment to moment, definitely, but none of it is particularly memorable or stand out the way tracks like BFG Division were, you know? My personal preference is for something maybe between Sonic Mayhem's Quake 2 soundtrack and Mick Gordon. I want to hear riffs like Bobby Prince, motherfucker. Give me that. All right. Now, before we wrap this up, I do need to make something very clear for any new viewers. As you can likely tell by the aesthetic choices I made for this channel, I love Doom. It is one of my top 5 games of all time. I've been playing it since it first showed up on that FTP server back in '93, and it has colored my entire perception and taste in video games for pretty much my whole life. I love it. Metal music, first-person shooters, and stuff that looks like Nine Inch Nails artwork. I mean, those are some of my very favorite things. So to say that I am biased when it comes to this game series would be a colossal understatement. As always, of course, I've done my best to be as fair and honest as possible, but nonetheless, you might want to keep all that in mind as we proceed. This may end up being a controversial take, a hot take, if you will, but I think this is my favorite Doom game out of the modern trilogy. 2016 was great, phenomenal, but it was a little bit too much of a departure from the classic Doom roots for my personal taste. I hate when they put it on Mars. Why do they do that? The original game took place on Phobos and Deimos. Why does it have to be on Mars? I don't know, it's kind of irrational of me, but I feel like that kind of ruins it when you put it on Mars. I liked that it was on Phobos and Deimos. It made it so much creepier for some reason. Anyway, Eternal also likewise was fantastic, but the over-reliance on the weapon quick swapping mechanic in order to advance through higher difficulties in Ultra Nightmare mode made replaying it kind of more of a hassle than anything else. With Dark Ages though, the combat, level design, and aesthetics, they all just happen to hit the perfect notes for me and make it the extremely rare exception where I actually don't really have any notes. To be clear, I think the entire modern trilogy is overall so well done that your favorite or the order you would rank them, it's going to be more of a personal preference than anything else. For me, the brutality of this 40k coded combat, the introduction of Lovecraft-inspired cosmic horror themes, and the dark medieval cinematic textures and presentation, that just puts it over the top, geez. 5 out of 5. Flawless.
Woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out, Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt, then I'm back down. Back down, what? Yup, woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out, Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt, then I'm back.